Welcome to the Tacy 12-hour fun run challenge, where I am preparing to do a 12-hour run with only 5 weeks of training. We are currently 2 weeks into the challenge plus the half a week pre-challenge, and we're going to go ahead and dive into what I've done for the first half, what the plan is for the second half, and everything that's happened so far. So let's go ahead and get into it. So just to get a quick little bit of background about myself and about this challenge, I do come from a triathlon background. I have been to 4 70.3 world championships. I've done 2 full Ironmans. I have done an open marathon. It was a trail marathon. That was a couple years ago. And so I do have a pretty good base level of fitness and experience in creating a training plan that I know that I can actually do this challenge. Although admittedly at the beginning of the challenge, I was not sure, but we're about to get into that. So again, I do have this background with endurance sports. However, about 2.5, 3 years ago, I had a really bad training injury that put me out for almost an entire year. At the beginning of the year, I was doing 20-mile runs at 6:30s, and by the end of the year, I was barely able to run 6 miles at 7:30 or 8-minute pace. It was pretty terrible. And over the last couple years, I've been just mitigating some of those injuries. Every time I'll ramp up load, something kind of flares up, and I've gone to PT, I've gone to chiropractor, I've gone to massage. I stretch, I do everything that you're supposed to do. And honestly, the one thing that's helped me the most is strength training. But again, most everything has been mitigating these injuries. And while I've been trying to get my pro card in triathlon, it has definitely been a huge blocker for me. Now, with all this, the recent addition onto these is at the beginning of the summer, I got run off the road on my bike, and it put me out for another couple weeks. Luckily, I was not majorly injured. The bike was not majorly injured either, so mostly some scrapes, bruises, definitely some hurting though, but nothing too terrible. I did, again, have to be out of training for a few weeks, and so that was another setback. As I started ramping back up, I then hyperextended my knee while out dancing. That was just having fun, and that's an old injury as well that just I had done a long run that day, and I think it was tired, and I just didn't notice, and it got a little jacked up. But all in all, to say that over the last 2.5 months, I had like 1 week or 2 weeks tops that were over 20 miles, and most of them were 10-mile weeks, if not less than that. And since the start of this challenge, my pre-challenge week, I did close to 60 miles. My first challenge week, I did 80 miles. And then my second week, I just clocked in 112 miles in the week. I'm a very competitive person. Like I said, I've been trying to get my pro card. I have always been pretty competitive, and there's an upside and a downside to that. The upside is it pushes me to my limits. I push my body, I eat healthy, I live healthy, I stay active, and I'm always trying to find ways to improve myself. The downside is that if I don't have a competition to train for, I do definitely lack some of that same motivation, and I will go more into a general routine of health versus actually pushing myself. Now, because of the injuries and all that, I haven't had races on the books this year, and I noticed, especially with the other injuries, I was starting to kind of fall off my game a little, and I was not having the same motivation to train, and I was just generally feeling pretty lethargic. And so I decided when I was in downtown one day that I wanted to try to do a 12-hour run And really the only time it fit was 5 weeks from that date earlier this month. And so that was where the idea spawned from. It was pretty out of the blue. I was coming off the hyperextended knee. I was just getting back to running, and I decided like I needed something that was going to really kick my ass into gear. And over the past couple weeks, I've been road tripping with my friend Sal. And so I knew I wasn't going to have my bike with me. I wasn't going to have access to a pool, but I could bring my resistance bands. I could bring my little climbing grip things for the car, and I could run. And so I figured I would ramp up my running load and try to do all this training while doing this road trip as well. And it has gone surprisingly well. Now, my initial plan was to be doing a weekly in-depth recap. I got a little bit of that for the pre-challenge, but I was on the road when I was recording week 1, and I have no idea what happened to that video, but I tried uploading it like 4 or 5 different times, reformatting, redoing it, re-recording. For some reason, that video just would not work. So here we are. We're going to do the pre-challenge recap, the week 1 recap, and the week 2 recap. So let's go a little bit into the pre-challenge here. I'm going to give a quick snapshot of some of my mileage from June, from August, and then we'll get into the pre-challenge just so you can see how big a difference it really was. So as you can see here, most of these weeks are from June and July, and again, they are pretty low mileage as far as running. I was still getting some swims, some bikes, but even those were a lot lower than what I'm used to doing. And again, those runs were they were maybe 10 miles, 20-mile weeks. I was not able to do much running at all, and I was really just trying to make sure that I had the time to recover. So now on to the pre-challenge. We can see here that even at the beginning of the week, I had a swim, I had a run. Those were back-to-back. Again, still pretty low. The swim was around 3,500, which is fairly average. The run was around 3.6 miles, definitely a little bit smaller. On that Tuesday, I did a 7.8 mile run. This is where I was kind of having the idea of that I might want to do this challenge. On Wednesday, I got a swim, a run, and a ride. This was actually the day I decided that, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this challenge. But because I still wasn't confident about my running ability yet, I did do just 3 different workouts, triathlon style, made sure to get a heavier day in without adding too much load onto my body for running specifically. The day after that, on Thursday, I kind of just went out for a run just to see what I could do. I wasn't sure. I had just taken like 2-3 weeks of barely running, and my goal was to keep it super slow, or just really just feeling comfortable pace. Like I wasn't trying to push anything at all. And I ended up doing 13.2 miles, around an hour 50. So that breaks down to right over 8:09 pace, which I know is still fast for a lot of people, but for me that is significantly slower than I'm used to running, even on my easy days. And I was consciously trying to keep it like that. I was trying to keep it slow because I know if I'm going to be doing this 12-hour run, I'm going to have to slow things down. It is going to be a necessity. There's zero chance I'm going to be going out and doing 12 hours at, even probably sub 8 pace would be absurd. Sub 9, unlikely, but we'll see how that all plays out. It's still all very, this is all very new to me. Doing endurance athlete and ultra marathon training, there's crossovers, but they are different training. So to continue into the pre-challenge, the next few days are where I really did start ramping up the running, just to see how I'd feel, how my body could handle the load. And on Friday, August 25th, I did a morning swim directly followed by an hour-ish run. And then that afternoon, because I did want to get a little bit more exercise in, I just went for like a super easy spin. Saturday, I did a swim directly followed by a very, very short run, 2 miles on a treadmill, just kind of shaking things out, and then doing some strength work. Sunday, started off with a 9-mile workout on the treadmill. I was doing drop downs, so I started at 2% grade and 8-minute pace, and I was dropping the pace while increasing the elevation each mile. So it ended up being 9 miles, ending at I think 6:30-ish pace and a 4% grade. Followed that directly with a swim. Again, I wanted to start working on increasing my load without having as much fatigue on my joints. And so that's why I wanted to do the swim after the run in this case. And then later that day, I actually did another 10-mile run, which brought that day up to pretty close to 20 miles, which is significantly longer than I was doing during any of the previous month. And I literally went from doing a 10-mile week to a 60-mile week. And even in my peak triathlon training, most of my run weeks are not 60 miles. They're usually closer to 40 or 50. Yeah, so that was the pre-challenge. We got a 60-mile week, and I felt pretty good going into it. Okay, so now to go on to week 1. We started the week with with a swim and a run in the morning. These morning runs, especially this week, my only purpose for them was to shake out, recover, and to feel better by the end of them. I know that because I'm ramping up a lot of load really quickly, I need to have these recovery runs in the mornings. And so, again, I didn't have pace goals except for to keep them slow. So on that Monday morning, starting off, did a 3,000 swim and a 3-mile run. On Tuesday, I did a 4,000 swim followed by a 7-mile run. And then that afternoon, I did another 6.5-mile run, followed by a 20-mile bike. This week, I was still swimming and biking because I was back home in Nashville. I had not left for the road trip yet. And so I was trying to sort of build up my aerobic capacity while, again, keeping the load light on my joints. And so that's why there's a lot more cycling and swimming in this week. The next day, Wednesday, we did a 6.8-mile run and a 38.8-mile bike. Same reasoning, building up aerobic capacity, keeping load on the joints a little bit lower. Thursday, I did a 16.4-mile hill workout in Percy Warner, which is one of my favorite spots to run. There's a loop that I do that's got some pretty good rolling hills, and essentially what I do will be tempo on the uphills, no matter what grade they are, whether it's 0.5% or 6% or 10%, whatever it is, tempo effort on the hills, and then easy running between all of them. And so for that, I did 16.4 miles. And then that afternoon, I did another 4 miles of steep hills with the Capital Steps workout group in downtown Nashville, which is just a workout group that honestly is fantastic and I love. Friday, did long, easy in the morning. This is when I started actually planning out some of my workouts. So 10 miles in the morning. And then I ended up doing an hour and a half recovery walk in the afternoon while I was doing some programming for my athletes. Now on Saturday, we did a easy run in the morning, 30 minutes, 4 miles. I was actually at the lake this weekend. And then that afternoon, I did 14-mile workouts. This is actually one of my workouts that I did during my triathlon training. and it was doing long tempo efforts. So it was 20:15:10, and they were averaging around like the 6:20s. So that came out to be 14 miles. And then on Sunday, I was originally planning on doing my long run, but I was pretty tired from the day before. And so I decided that I was going to round out that week with just an easy 4 miles. I was not willing to push my body to a spot where I was going to be hurt and have to end the challenge. And that is going to wrap up 1 week. We ended up with about 60 miles biking, 7,000 yards swimming, and 85 miles running total for that week. On to week 2, aka the road trip week. So starting out, actually, Monday, we were still at the lake. I woke up nice and early and did a marathon. I was not originally planning on doing this, but I thought that it would be a really good milestone marker. And so I went out. I did not really have any pace goals for this. The only goal was to complete the marathon. And I did it, 26.2 miles. Came in around 3 hours, 22 minutes. So that would be 7:40 pace. Again, I wasn't pushing it. I have done an open marathon before, and I did a sub-3 on a trail marathon with a ton of hills. So ideally, I could probably do a 250, somewhere in the upper 240s for a marathon, but I haven't raced one in a while, so I don't actually know. So started the week out with a marathon. Not too shabby. The next day was 5.27 miles, and this is actually when we were leaving for our road trip. So Monday, left the lake. Tuesday, and packed. And then Tuesday, left for a 1 week road trip out to LA. So I managed to get 6 miles in that morning. Again, keeping them super easy, 8:40 pace. Day after that, Wednesday, did some long pickups in the morning, followed by HMP in the afternoon. We were in Dallas at this point, and so those morning pickups were 5-minute efforts at around marathon pace. So those came out to an average of 10 miles, 7-minute pace, and then the efforts were closer to 6:20s. And then that afternoon, it was a little bit higher intensity, doing 3 minutes on, a minute and a half off, and those hard efforts were closer to half marathon pace, so around 6 to 6:10. Next day, did 8 miles in the morning just to avoid some heat. Another just kind of recovery day. Wasn't ramping up the load too much on this day. Friday, I did 10 miles in the morning, and then I was supposed to be doing 13 that evening, but I ended up missing it because we decided to make the next leg of our journey. So did end up missing that workout. It is what it is. So the next day, I did get 7.6 miles in the morning and did a half marathon in the afternoon. That was our final leg of our journey. Yep, Saturday. That was when we went from Phoenix to LA. So did the 7.6 miles in the morning before it, drove 6 hours, got to Venice Beach, and then went and ran a half marathon on the beach. So fun. And then closing out the week, I did a long run in the morning, 17 miles, came in right around 2 hours. Went on a nice little beach walk in the afternoon, and then that evening I did another 7 miles to bring it to about 24 miles. And that is going to wrap up the week 2 of the challenge, right around 112 miles. Hopefully that gives you some good insight into the training I've been doing so far. Again, I went from doing about 10 miles all the way up to 112 miles per week just in the last 2.5 weeks. I am planning out all my training using Training Peaks. I am planning out my nutrition using Fuelin. Here's a quick preview of it, just to kind of overlay of what I've been doing, how I can plan it out. I have some other videos, and I have been doing including some of this in my daily recaps as well. So if you're interested in learning more, leave questions, comments, anything down below. Again, if you do have questions about training, if I didn't answer your questions, if you have other questions, whatever you want, ask it down below. I'll read it all. Again, I went from doing about 10 miles a week all the way up to 112 miles a week just in the last 2.5 weeks. So it's a little absurd. I probably would not recommend this to most people. The one thing I do recommend for anyone getting into ultras, into endurance endurance training, is to slow it down. This is something that's very difficult for me, for a lot of other people, but especially if you're going to be putting this much load on your body, you have to have your recovery runs. You have to make sure you're fueling properly. I am planning out all of my runs in Training Peaks right now. I have also used an app called Human Go, but because of my road trip and some other few things, it's just easier for me to plan in Training Peaks. I'm using the app Get Fuelin', or just Fuelin', to do all of my nutrition planning and nutrition recording. So if you have questions on any of that stuff, whether it's training, nutrition, plans, if you're interested in coaching, I've got links down below. And for all those questions, leave it down in the comments below. I will read them all. I will answer as much as I can. And yeah, that's going to be the first 2.5 weeks. We have 2.5 more weeks until the challenge. And I will be running for 12 hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It is now time to get a little more R&R, get a new pair of shoes, and continue on for the second workout of my day. Love you all. Happy training, and see you later.